So this one is on Make and Work Section 5. How do I even find a job? I'm afraid no one will hire me. We start with Jane. Jane's story. Jane is a 32-year-old woman who hadn't worked for 5 years. Before that, she worked for 6 years as a help desk supervisor, but was abruptly laid off. Since then, Jane struggled with substance abuse, anxiety, and depression. She was living in a supported living apartment, had no income, and was financially dependent on family and community resources such as Maine Care and food stamps. At their first meeting, Jane told her employment specialist that she was too afraid of failure and disappointment to try to work again, but she needed to have some income and she felt pressure from her family to work. Jane and her employment specialist began by reviewing her skills and strengths. That was a great challenge for her, but when they were finished, she had an impressive list of skills and experience that she could use in a workplace. Jane began to have hope. The next hurdle Jane faced was gathering the courage to submit resumes to employers. Knowing she was risking rejection, she experienced a great deal of anxiety around this. Jane had a lot of statements like, "No one will want to hire me. I'm sure everyone has heard all about all the things I've done." On her own, Jane sent in 2 resumes and became very discouraged when she hadn't heard back after a week. Her employment specialist told her that there could be many reasons for the lack of response and encouraged her to stay hopeful. Then one day, Jane called and told her employment specialist in a hesitant voice that she had an interview for a full-time data entry operator at a large telemarketing company. Jane met with her employment specialist and worked on responses to interview questions, including answering questions she was afraid of, like, why have you not worked in over 5 years? And what strengths and skills would you bring to the organization? They practiced until Jane was comfortable and she could answer these questions if they were asked. Jane called several days later to say that she had been offered the position after passing a drug test and criminal background check. She sounded more confident and happier than her employment specialist had ever heard her before. When the employment specialist told her that she deserved the position, for the first time, Jane did not disagree. Now, fear that you won't get hired is a common worry for most people when looking for work. You may be worried that the job market is tight. You may have worried that you don't have the right training. You may wonder whether or not you should tell a potential employer that you have mental health issues. Each one of these concerns is legitimate and can be addressed. A thorough search of what jobs are available in your community can help you assess the job market. Your most recent work experience will help you decide whether or not you need more training. Take the time to find out what your rights are under the American with Disabilities Act. The American Disabilities Act prohibits employers from discriminating against people with disabilities during application, hiring, offering promotions, determining pay, and more, as long as you can perform the essential functions of the job with or without reasonable accommodations. Employers cannot discriminate against you in these areas. Reasonable accommodations in a way that employers can make changes to the environment or job task to make the job work better for you and not cause the employer undue hardship. So this one has some discussion topics, but first, before we get into the discussion topics, I want to talk about the suggested resources in this part here. Now, it's actually important to know that you're not required to disclose your mental health condition to your employer, but you may need to disclose in order to get reasonable accommodations under the ADA. You don't have to tell them your personal details. You only need to tell them as much as they need to know in order to provide accommodations. So whether or not to disclose your mental health condition to an employer requires careful consideration. Each person will come to their own decision about whether or not to disclose and how much to disclose. It can be helpful to review this with people familiar with your employment and your ADA, which can help. But don't abandon the idea of going back to work just because you may have been out of work for a while. A thorough assessment of your skills and assessment of your job market in an area may be trying some volunteer opportunities and connecting with employment professionals, which can help you successfully get back into the workforce. So some of the suggested resources are the Job Accommodation Network, which is www.askjan.org. JAN provides free confidential technical assistance about job accommodations in the American with Disabilities Act to both job seekers and employers. You can find it on their website. Accommodation ideas, legal information about your right to work under the ADA, discussion of disclosing a disability, and information about finding a job that is right for you. The Boston University Center for Psychiatric Rehabilitation has a website with information related to laws, disclosure, and situations related to having mental illness in the work or school setting. And once again, you also have the Employment for Me website, workers with disability contributing to Maine's workforce. This website is www.employmentforme.org. It's a clearinghouse for a tremendous amount of employment-related information for job seekers, employers, transition age youth, and employment service providers. So, what are the discussion topics for Section 4? Talk with each other about your dream jobs. Oh, I think I've already mentioned that. Oh, that's for Section 4. Sorry. I was looking for Section 5. There we go. Section 5, discussion topics. Discuss with your group your thoughts about disclosing your mental health diagnosis with an employer. What are your concerns? Have you ever disclosed your mental health history to employment? What was it like, and why did you disclose? So, my ideas on disclosing for a mental health diagnosis is it's really, unless needed, it's not their business, or if there's some way that they can help you. So, when I was at the clubhouse and unsure of what I wanted to do, I did one of the transitional employment sites. With the transitional employment, because of the nature of the work being through, the employer still meets you and does an interview, but the job is through the clubhouse, and the clubhouse owns the position, and they fill it. So I still got paid. The check came directly to me, but it's just a way to get my foot in the door for 6 to 9 months. Generally, I think I was there 6, and I had to disclose. It was a little nerve-wracking. I wondered how the person viewed me. But after actually doing it and talking to the person more, I was fine. So it depends on your situation. Okay, so do some research on the web about disclosure and job accommodations. Based on what you learned, develop a list of pros and cons about disclosure. Consider what job accommodations, if any. Okay, so there are pros and cons to it. You can find that sometimes your job can give you a tremendous amount of support. And it says consider job accommodations. So there are some accommodations that can be needed too. And depending on the job, most jobs I've noticed are pretty reasonable about it and be like, okay, I know one of the places that works very closely with the clubhouse is TJ Maxx, for example, and they're very, very understanding of mental health services. So, question 3, talk about what it means to us when we get turned down for a job. So, in the current job market and everything, it's a great deal. Dealing with rejection is a big part of it. You might apply, an average person could apply for 20 jobs and only hear back from 2. So it's hard. And plus you have a lot of people competing for the same job. They might have better training than you already, and they don't have to train somebody. So it's hard. Reaching out for support, talking to can help. So, question 4, ask each other what types of support do you need when trying to find a job. This is different for everybody. I've helped other people with creating their resumes, using technology, because when they last worked, technology wasn't really a big thing. Now, basically every job you have to apply for online. So, finding out about those resources and where your barriers are and what kind of support you might need. Some people in the beginning, they need someone to come with them. So, and that's it for section 5. Thank you for listening, and I'll be doing section 6.